All right, hello, folks, and welcome to Bards and Books, and welcome to another episode of Leveling Up. This is number 13, and today we are doing Everybody Loves Large Chests, continuing on by Neven Iliev, and we are on Book 2, Fizzlesprocket, and of course this is narrated by my favorite narrator, Jeff Hayes, so you can be sure I absolutely loved this one as well. Of course, I'm joined by Nick as always. Nick, how are you doing, and what are your initial thoughts on the book?
Well, first off, I can't believe we've already done 13 of these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Yeah. I love this series. It's what is it? It was a surprise series for me. It's a very shocking book, you know.
Mhm.
That's kind of part of it. It's a very shocking series, but I love it.
I'm going to have these in chapters now, so we'll go chapter by chapter. There are 4 chapters in this book, not including the prologue, the epilogue, and the interlude, but I will fit those in accordingly. So if you haven't seen our chat on book 1 of this series, I will include that link as well. That's non-spoiler and spoiler, so you can check out if you want to give the series a try. But this is book 2, so it'll be all spoilers here. Of course, fantastic narration by Jeff Hayes, but we did get the addition of like sound effects, more sound effects, right?
Lots
A
more
lot
sound
more,
effects.
yeah, a lot more crude humor as well. But like that's, I love that kind of stuff. A lot. It's not for everyone,
Oh yeah.
but I feel like Jeff Hayes really stepped up his game here from book 1. Sound effects with the voices, a lot more sound effects like just not with the voices, like a recording, like the sound of a bell or like the door opening, stuff like that.
hmm
It was a little more immersive, I think.
Yeah, even like if a person's like talking to another person from a little farther away, he'll like
Mhm.
make that person sound like do that voice a little farther from the mic, making it sound like, oh, I'm far away from you and I'm yelling at you, kind of thing.
So we'll start with the prologue. This was an interesting prologue because it's really quick, and it's just like this character that you're introduced to. He's watching the destruction of Monotal that
hmm
was caused by Boxy, and he's just enjoying the show. He's like having popcorn, just enjoying watching what this mimic is up to. We do get introduced to him later as well, but this is like he's basically a god.
Great character development for that character. Not saying
Mhm.
anything, but like as far as characters go, I like the way that he's written that character.
And just an
Mhm.
interesting concept. Never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
He like constantly changes, and
hmm
it was so confusing at first. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And then you're like, this is
Yeah.
interesting.
I
We'll
guess
touch a
that's
bit on that.
yeah. We'll talk about that
We'll
later.
talk about that one later on. So,
hmm
anyways, chapter 1. It's called Science.
hmm
So, I love how this one starts off because it starts off with the humor that I remember, like the characters that I remember who are the most humorous characters, Zira and Korra,
hmm
and they're fighting, right? They're like
Yeah.
two demons that don't get along. There is some hardcore X-rated scenes that
Yeah.
we get right off the bat.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. There's. I mean, before we even get to that, I want to say that how he wrote the beginning of the book to kind of take you from the last book. If you hadn't read that last book in a while, it kind of starts you off like, hey, the guy's watching over what happened. It's like this is what happened, and even
Mhm.
in the beginning of when the science chapter, it's like Cora's talking about the explosion and seeing it and all that stuff, and it's kind of like, okay, this is kind of like a pre-up, like, oh, this is what happened before. These are the familiars, these are the characters, without really laying it down like here's what happened before. It's like it's these kind of written that into the book and it's very seamless, I think, you know,
Mhm.
not without going through
Yeah,
everything that happened in the previous book, but like, some stuff, kind of works it
absolutely.
in very fluidly instead of what happened last time, was this
Mhm.
straight up saying it like an author note. But yeah, the cool thing, Cora, this is probably what even for me, when I first read the second book, almost kind of threw me for a loop. And I'm like, what am I? The first book had a little bit of that.
Mhm.
The second book is like, oh, Jesus, right from the get go.
Mhm.
Um, there is some pretty. vulgar language and vulgar things going on. Really, just straight off the bat, shock value. This is going on. You're like, what am I reading? What's going on?
Yeah.
You almost kind of need to get past that a little bit before you. And I feel like that's probably where a lot of people can stop on the series. I feel like that could be a big that first book doesn't feel like the second book at all. Is this what this book series is going to be about? It's really not at all. It's the whole beginning part. It seems like a little bit more of like the party kind of figuring out their places and figuring out, like any sort of like D&D party, kind of working the kinks out, their fighting style, a little bit of growth, character growth. It's kind of what the beginning of this book's all about.
Yeah.
First chapter,
Yeah, because there is some like experimenting, like Boxy's experimenting with spells, these spells that he's acquired that he hasn't had a chance to use a lot of, and like crystals and stuff.
Yeah.
There's some of that going on, right?
As well as like with his body doing like the shape shifting.
Yeah. I think soon after there's an ambush, right? These adventurers are ambushing this cart, and he gets kind of caught up in that. But he uses this bomb crystal, which is placed in a very interesting location. Zira or Snack, is it called?
Yes. Well, I guess that's we're supposed to be her character kind of designed as a succubus. She's like, I know, you should do it here. They'll never find it. It's like, oh yeah, good idea. No, it's like not realizing that there's a secondary reason why she's trying to do it that way.
yeah. But I think everybody dies, right? All the people. Yeah.
I believe there's like one of the oh god, what are they called? The raiders or whatever. That was in the dungeon that ran away and got to the raiders camp, and they put him in the dungeon, and Boxy knocked the building down on him, and he was underneath there. So eventually he was able to be found and interrogated for what happened.
Oh, you're talking about the when they reached the fort, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it a fort? Yeah. Is that not a camp? I guess it's a fort.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like some building thing. But
yeah,
they assault the fort, right? He gains some abilities, some levels, and man, again, his familiars are just so handy. What would Boxy do without his demons?
Or even without being a warlock,
Yeah.
Like as he says, it's I guess it's kind of a really lucky stint. He's like, oh man, this like cadaver absorption skill, which he used to get the warlock class, he's unable to get a lot from that. Like he's like, I feel like I'm wasted. He feels like he's wasting it sometimes. Like I wasted all this meat, all these corpses, by not eating them. But I'm trying to gain skills and levels from it, and it's like constantly failing. And maybe he'll get a skill or something that he doesn't want.
And then he even starts learning to use his biomass for certain corpses and the cadaver absorption for others. Everything to maximize his attributes and gaining levels and whatnot. So there's some growth. There's some growth with this mimic.
It's very much a LitRPG in that way, where it's kind of all about growth. It's always like, oh, how is he going to play this? Is he going to be sneaky? Is he going to be whatever? And it always seems to throw you for a loop, whether he's going to be sneaky or he's just like, let's just run in there, run and attack right now. You'll play with a little bit of espionage, like, oh yeah, no, we're on your side, adventurers, and then wipe everybody out. And
he's also he just craves learning. Like this mimic just craves learning new ways to maximize his abilities and learn new skills just to help himself out. It's really interesting, and he's like, you can see it with the way he was shapeshifting all night when he was trying to add wheels to himself, right? Wheels going without damaging himself through shapeshifting ability.
Running through biomass,
right.
Trying to figure out how to attach himself, make himself spin without flying apart and falling to pieces and hurting himself.
Yeah, And then the end where Cora's just like, you probably could have just taken that cart and we could have pulled you.
Yeah. It's always just like, yeah, that's a little bit of extra, a little bit of comedy. It's like, wow, why didn't you do this? And he just gets mad and like hits her.
Yeah.
It's just like, why'd you do that for? It's like, nothing, no reason.
Yeah. Oh, that was funny. But yeah, so that first part is just him learning new stuff, figuring himself out, couple attacks, couple of level ups, and then we move on to chapter 2, which is called Fine Print. So this starts with a demon ritual, right? He's collecting troll blood.
Yeah.
And, he gets this ritual going when he needs a pure maiden.
Mm-hmm.
I love how he uses Zira as the pure maiden, but it's all about the perception of the ritualist. It's like, if you believe she's pure in that way, then she's pure.
It's part of the way how magic works. It's kind of like if you believe in fake news, it's true kind of thing. Where it's like, hey, I figured this out myself, and this is how I feel. This is how it should work. And it's like, or like just being so confident. Like, this is clearly how it works. Clearly, Zira is not sick or wounded. She's clean. She's, until I put the troll blood on her, but she's like a clean person that isn't sick or wounded. So clearly she's a pure maiden. Despite all the other things that's going on, doesn't really think that way.
Yeah.
And was kind of a loophole.
Yeah.
I believe the whole reason for this is he just wants some demonology skill, because he's like, oh, yes, you said these demons, they're super helpful, man.
Yeah.
Super helpful for a monster. Maybe not for, your average Joe Blow warlock. Might not want to tangle with that so much. But as a monster, it's like, yeah, I should get more of this. I want some like people who will follow me and have to do what I say. This is perfect.
And speaking of loopholes, he summons Nagnamar. It's like this huge demon, but it's through Zira's body. So it's like he kind of controls him because he controls Zira. That was a crazy loophole, and he got into a bit of trouble with that. But that was a funny part where he's like, all right, this is punchy. He's gonna punch himself. Punch yourself in the face, you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, it's crazy how it's like he starts off like, oh my god, I've summoned this thing, I better hide, be a chest, and it immediately calls him out like, oh, it's you who did this. And then it doesn't tell you right away. It's like, oh, then he realized it's like, all of a sudden the way he speaks, the way Jeff Hayes speaks, it's like, he starts like, please don't kill me, please don't kill me. And then he starts talking like, you see it by the way he's talking, like, oh, when he realizes that the body that is used is Zira's, and the body is still under contract. So Nagnamar is using that body under contract. He can't hurt him.
Yeah.
He starts getting this confident, cocky attitude. You started seeing it like from, oh, he's terrified to, why is he being cocky now? It's like he's figured something out.
And he very much upsets the demon realm, and gets a call from Carl, who's like the 1-800 demons
are us.
Yeah, but he exchanges. So he's like, please just do not summon that demon again. They're not happy down there. You'll get in trouble. And in exchange, we'll give you level 5 demonology. So it's like, wow.
It's like, we'll give you levels. You're looking for levels? We'll just give you levels just for this once, because we don't want you to ever summon Nagnor again. He never wants you to summon him again. Don't summon him using your familiar. Can't do that. That'll hurt Zira and her soul, and then we'll have to kill you and torture you or whatever. Also, don't summon Nagnor again anytime, anywhere, for any reason, using any ritual, because he doesn't want to deal with you anymore.
Yeah.
And we'll give you the free levels. Just leave him alone.
Yeah. It's like, it's funny because he doesn't like negotiate, like he sees a advancement opportunity for him. He's like, I'll take it. There's no negotiating with Mimic, and that helps him out a lot down the line, like big time. So that was really cool. And I mean, level 5 demonology, I would assume it's really hard to level that skill up. So that was just a huge bonus. Like,
I'm sure there's, I mean, it even kind of mentions there's a couple of rituals for like, you can get like, a big fancy ritual that gives you like lukewarm soup and stuff like that. It's like not super useful. And you could probably do, a ton of that kind of rituals to kind of get your demonology skill up. I think that's what it's supposed to be, how you're probably supposed to level it up. But how do I get my most bang for my buck? What do I have available to me? What would be useful? Oh, I can summon something. Let's do that, without really thinking what would happen after that, or asking any questions.
Yeah.
Doesn't ask questions, he just does what he wants.
That was it for chapter 2. So that was
short,
cool.
sweet.
Short, sweet, really nice. Nice little dynamic there with the demon realm. And then chapter 3, Gainful Employment. Now, this is where we see Boxy on the cover. He's like this humanoid shape mimic. I thought that was so interesting. When I saw that cover, I thought that was... Because you see the tear in his fabric, and you see he's a box still in body, but he looks like a human. It's like, where does this go? So I just thought that like that form of him was really, really interesting and really cool. He can really blend in there. But we see Boxy, he's completing these mercenary quests for gold, and he's like we just talked about, he's the ideal mercenary because he doesn't ask questions, he doesn't negotiate, he just does the work and he does it quickly and efficiently. So
he has to be a mercenary instead of like he'd love to join a guild or something like that. But they do these screenings where they check to see your stats to make sure you're not a wanted person. If you've done anything bad, what kind of taboo you have. If you're like a raider or a criminal, it'll come up in your stats like, oh, this person, if your job's highwayman, they'll be like, oh, okay, this guy, he's a thief or whatever, he's stealing from people. We can't take you in. Or for him, it would show that he's a monster and not a person. And they, especially in these adventurer guilds, they just take him off, which is part of the reason why, and going into the town in the first place, is that he's maxed out his warlock job. And in order to get past that, he needs a trainer, but he can't get a trainer because he's a monster. And there's no trainer is going to give you like, oh yeah. And their town's really building up because of all the terrible stuff that's happened just one town away.
Right.
Yeah.
But he does meet someone to kind of train him, Corny Fizzlesprocket, right? And she's like a gnome. Yeah, she's an artificer. She's a gnome artificer. So he's learning artificing because he wants to be able to make equipment and stuff for himself, which is a mimic. Like you're not going to find that kind of stuff around, I'm sure there's not a lot of mimics up to his level, his level of understanding and
ingenuity,
communicating, and power. So
he has a kind of like a title, a fear title, basically. It's a title of like, right. I think it's like Slayer of Humanity or something like that.
Butcher of Humanity.
Butcher Humanity. Yeah. And he's killed so many humans that you just automatically cause fear in humans. So people like elves and dwarves and all those people, they have no problem talking to him. It's like, oh yeah, that's a guy. Or Fizzy, who's a gnome, no problem talking to him. But every human there is looking at him like, this guy gives us like monstrous vibe. This guy's like clearly a bad person, even though I've got no proof of that, kind of like, oh, he's walking in the wrong neighborhood or something. So,
but things do go wrong for him, like not with that, but with Fizzy. Like things go askew occasionally, and we find out that Zira's been wiping her memory. Doesn't go well in the long run because things start popping up, and she's like, wait a minute, this wasn't like this before, right? I never closed that door. And so trouble is brewing.
Yeah. I do like how they show trauma in this book as well, where how, Fizzy's kind of going through the loss of her father and brother, who they're like, they're already kind of down on their luck being gnomes in a human country, Yeah. And it's like from the last book, we know we don't treat elves well, and they all think that gnomes are, crazy people. They're like, oh, those crazy, gnomes, little people that are like making fire throwing devices and lightning bolt guns, and they're all, machines of war. She's trying to get over the death of her parents, or her dad and her brother, and like, her crying herself to sleep, and they really go into it. He's pretty smart, this Box, but he still couldn't like keep it all together for Fizzy. Like he's like, he'll say something or he'll get excited and it'll like make a little, something will happen where it's like, oh, the monster comes out for a second, and he's got to like, oopsie, here's your wipe her memory for me.
The way Neven Iliev just plots these out, he includes so much deception for the reader. It's like so many twists, and he's just got such a great way of writing that involves so much deception and like surprises for the reader. So many interesting aspects to his writing. It's just it makes it all so great, despite anything that people might not be attracted to. I think it's great writing, and it's a great story the way he tells it.
Where he'll almost seem like there's a path that the story's going to go down. It's like, oh, we're following this character. He's figuring things out, and then all of a sudden it goes this way. Oh, that guy. Oh, we dealt with him. Don't worry about that. Or when Boxy gets that one of his missions to get bouncewood bark, and he's going to leave town, and it shows, town guard tells you a little bit more world building about the town guard, how they're power leveled, all that stuff. But the priestess of the god Teresa comes, up to the gates like, oh, I go with an adventure, a big dark guy in a big cloak, massive build, and the writer kind of makes you think, oh, that's Boxy and that's Zira. Doesn't kind of uses a similar voice to Zira, and you're like, oh, this is how they get in and out of town. And they have this little talk. This is a person, this priestess in town. One of the guards kind of knows her, seen her down in town, and just like, okay, yeah, you're going to collect these blossoms or whatever, and you see him leave with this adventurer that just came to town. Oh, he's kind of like scared. We don't know about this guy. And then it swaps it to Boxy running past them, like, there's that big adventure over there, and like, oh, that's a free meal. They're out in the middle of nowhere. Oh, but he's adventurers there, and they're all armed and ready, and like, I better leave that for now. I'm not gonna fuck with them. Totally thought that was Boxy, the first time reading it.
You think it's them, and then you realize, you're like, wow. It's just, it's so cool how he does that. So many points of deception there.
Because they talk about like, oh, they're building up this, they got this wall with this barrier, and they had all these issues with birds flying over this magic barrier and setting off the alarms. And Boxy's like, I'll just dig right underneath it. And I used to climb over the wall. I can't climb over the wall anymore, so I'll just dig underneath the wall and go out from underneath the wall.
They get assassinated by Boxy.
Yep, they comes back around later. After he does his quest, he comes back and he's just like, Teresa's faithful. They're supposed to be celibate, but they're taking the dirt road to get away from it. And there they are, unarmored, in a field, unprepared for the assassination attempt. Or assassination, just straight up, just one taps.
But then the guardsman Thomas, he gets on Boxy's back. Zira infiltrates the church as well. I think at that point she infiltrates the church and deceives the city watch. I think she becomes like a receptionist for the city watch lieutenant, and she just spreads misinformation and just wreaks havoc around the town, which is just so interesting to have Boxy have his, the spy just infiltrating the city.
And I don't even think that Boxy's telling her to do it. I just think that she's just being demonic, just trying to cause mischief and trouble for all the people there. They're just like, all right, I'll when they destroyed Mount Tall, he's like, I'll pretend to be one of the elf saboteurs from the old war and like make this sort of like a conflict happen. And the same thing here. It's like, well, I'm going to starting up some conflict here and there and like set it up in a certain way, plant these ideas in people's heads, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very, monster on the loose of them.
Yeah. So while that's all going down, I think he's still like leveling up because he's fighting these like merc dwellers, like these
Mhm.
big lobster or crab creatures. I think the crab is like queen, but
Yeah.
merc dwellers, this merc queen. He gains a new ability, mend flesh, which
Mhm.
is what the monster
Yeah.
he fought in the
Flesh
first book, the
Flesh
Flesh
Maiden.
Maiden. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a badass skill. So
Yeah.
being able to
Oh,
mend flesh now,
healing over time, pretty
yeah,
deep, pretty amazing skill.
and now it's like, oh, I should probably just worry more about my MP now since I can just use mend flesh.
Mhm.
Right? It's like he's still learning
Mhm.
about how to be a top-notch adventurer, and he's doing well. He's doing so well.
Becoming a jack of all trades kind of
Yeah.
character. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's doing great. He gains a new skill, acid spray, which is like
Mhm.
kind of distorted in his information center because I guess he doesn't have the class for it, right?
Yeah.
For this skill.
He gets it from the cadaver absorption.
Mm-hmm.
It's where he leveled up and he got the other skill. This one he was able to steal, like he stole the warlock class.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all garbled. And I mean, he's kind of dealt with that before because he was, when he summoned Nagnamor, it was kind of doing that. Also great with the sound effects for that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, where you almost
Yeah.
kind of like feel your modem turning on,
Mm-hmm.
feel
Mm-hmm.
the dial up going in.
And then, of course, Fizzy regains her memories, and she kind of traps Boxy, calls the
Mhm.
guards. This huge fight ensues. Boxy escapes. He steals some safe items from her. So there's this new character that we are introduced to, and the way we are introduced to her, I think it's like foreshadowing. I think she's going to be a big, prominent character in the future books, and that's Imuril, who is this
Mm.
elf wizard from Ishigar, the Ishigar Republic to the north, right? This powerful republic.
Yeah, I'm surprised you got that. I
Yeah,
that's really good.
yeah.
They do
Because
make a lot of references in this, but
yeah,
like,
the way we're introduced to her, we know there's this tension between humans and elves, right?
mhm.
We hear all these racist remarks between the humans, the way that humans view elves, and we haven't even seen a lot of the elf side. It's more humans, but the way we're introduced to this elf wizard, it's like we are going to get some more POVs, and there's going to be a huge conflict with them. So I think that's the end of chapter 3, and then we get into the interlude. Okay, so the interlude is we realize that Fizzy has this tick counter. It's
Mm.
basically her regaining her memories because she's got this
Oh,
skill that's specific to gnomes, which is like this rigid internal clock. And from all the memory wipes that have been happening, she recognizes that things are off, right? And it's always when Boxy's around. And then I
yeah.
think through like some dreams or something, she gets her memories back. They return, and that's why she traps Boxy, calls the guards, and there's
Yeah,
this new
yeah,
fight,
yeah.
right?
That's it kind of like goes I think you're right. I think right before the interlude is where he gets captured.
Right.
And then
Yeah. Again, the formatting,
Mhm.
the twists you get. It's just
Yeah.
great. After that, we are into chapter 4, which is chaos, and it really is
Mhm.
chaos. Starts out with Boxy's escape, just slaying all the guards, um, and then it's a very messy escape, and then he gets kicked almost to
Mhm.
death with a one shot by Edward, this new character. So Edward
Mm.
Allen, he's a spy master to the Emperor, and he's just almost at god level
Oh yeah.
levels. He's got 100 rogue, level
Mhm.
75 spy, level
Mhm.
59 occult alchemist,
Yep.
and I think some other cool things, but
He's
that's wild.
insane. They kind of like mention a few other characters, but like he's the main one that is like really brought into here. And he's mentioned a little bit, just a little bit at the end of the first book, and he is a badass.
And you're scared for Boxy, man. You
Mm-hmm.
very. Oh, I love the interrogation that he has
Oh,
with
great
Boxy.
scene.
So funny. He's just
Mhm.
losing his cool over this mimic, and we finally learn Boxy's middle name.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask if you
Boxy
remembered
2
it.
Morningwood. It's
Yeah.
Boxy Trap Morningwood. Because yeah, he is a trap.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. I'm like, all right, we finally got that. Oh, Fizzy is added to the interrogation.
Mm.
And at this point, oh no. I think at this point she's learning that Boxy was involved with the death of her family.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, but they were already dead. He just ate them.
Yeah.
He just
So.
consumed them after they died,
Mm-hmm.
not because of him. So that was kind of interesting. Like she gets really upset, but then she does some internalizing, and she's like, well, he didn't kill them.
Yeah.
He just kind of
Trauma does terrible things to your mind, right? And Boxy was technically planning on killing her when he was done with her. So she's not wrong that he's not a good person, but she's kind of doing this internalization where it's like, oh, is he
well,
really that bad? He's
well,
saying that I'm the bad person, and I'm starting to kind of feel like the bad person because I wouldn't be in this situation if I didn't try to rat out Boxy. And people died because of that, but like he didn't actually do anything to me. So why am I here? Why did I do
was
this?
it mentioned that he was gonna kill her? I think
Mm-hmm.
he was gonna kill her at the end.
He was going to collect. He's like, oh, he's spending all this money on parts and lessons from her, but he's like, oh, he remembers the safe numbers because she went in there one time. He's like, I know the code to her safe, and when I'm done, and I get my when she like levels me up past level 25, I'm gonna go and eat her, take all her stuff, and get out of this town. That's just his whole thing. He's like, he's gonna build up his levels here, eat her, and take off. Get his. He's like, oh, I'm paying to it now, but I'll get it all later because clearly, when you have money, what you're supposed to do is hoard it, like me. But she's like paying off her debts and buying more parts, and she's like, all the money that he's given her is already gone. So.
But you feel bad for Fizzy because now she's added to this interrogation. It's like she's an accomplice,
Mm-hmm.
and you hear Edward essentially blackmailing her, and he wants to use her, right? He wants to use her artificer skill for this upcoming war that he's set on,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even though he finds out that it's not even the elves' fault.
Mm-hmm.
It was this creature. He wants this
He,
war to happen. So
yeah. So he can get his spy levels up.
yeah.
Because once you get to a level 102 jobs, you're become immortal. It's like kind of you're working your way up to godhood, I guess. I think after your third level 100 job, which you'll have all the time in the world because you'll be immortal to get to your third level 100 job, you become like some sort of like god being or something like that.
Yeah. Enhance your life a lot
Yeah.
longer.
So that's the reason why he's trying to do that.
But I really like that because it's like part of being human, right? And it's like there's a lot of monsters in this series, not just Boxy.
No, it
Yeah.
really shows you like, okay, monsters are monsters, but are we not all monsters in a way? We just have different ways of thinking about the world. Yeah.
It was really cool and a nice shift in your, I guess, in pacing and in what you expect. Like the expectation for the series was when Boxy got his warlock and artificer class removed.
Mm-hmm.
So the I guess Edward's
Assistant, whatever, like,
or whatever she
yeah.
has
Well,
known,
she's
right?
another member of his team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she
His
removes
zone.
the warlock and artificer class,
Mm-hmm.
and Boxy just loses a bunch of abilities and skills and whatnot. But she wants to keep him as a pet because I guess he's like she thought he was hugging him when he was trying to eat her or something.
Yeah, it's trying to like hold her hostage, but
Right.
like she's also over level 100 in one of her classes. So she's already a level 100 as well. So she's just as OP as Edward. Not to mention, he also loses stats. So he loses intelligence, which is part of the reason like why he's so crafty right now. He loses a lot of his, he was speaking and having, proper full sentences, and he kind of like rolls back the clock a little bit, and he starts talking a little bit more in his monstery ways from the first book, like tasty and, not tasty,
Right. But we approach the end. Remind me again, where are they being transported to? Because they're transported by Griffin in this cage, and they're going to
a research facility past the Saw Blade Mountains, which is part of the geography, and on the other side of the Saw Blade Mountains, there's this research facility as well as the capital, but they want to take them to the research facility and probably like take apart Boxy there and figure out why he's so smart, and maybe figure out how exactly they did the explosion of the Monotol. Like, they kind of have an idea, but like his craftiness really comes into play,
Absolutely, yeah. It's pretty remarkable that he's able to escape, because he was able to withdraw that mana potion, I think, earlier, and just have it kind of holding on to it
in his mouth. He had it in his mouth the whole time, and it was just like just holding on to it. He was asking questions and like making Fizzy, who is just going through it right now, and making her answer his questions like, oh, how much MP do our chains take away from us? And it was just that little. It was always this whole chance of fate kind of thing, like, oh, the seals weren't very good on the engine, so he's able to like get anyway, I know you want to say it. I'm gonna break it down.
I mean,
exactly how it goes down, because it's quite complicated. It's really cool.
Yeah, right? He uses acid spray on the right part. Right, it kind of shuts off the lightning mechanism or whatever. He escapes. He puts Fizzy in his mouth.
Well, he carves his chains out, which is pretty metal.
Oh yes,
yes. He has to like push his dagger through his body out the front and wait for it, like
carves it out himself.
Shape shifts himself to heal. Close up his wounds and like digs
he's
out
got the men flesh now.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he can even use the men flesh. He's not actually healing. He's just covering it so he doesn't bleed out. He's shape shifting so he doesn't bleed out. So he's just tearing these bolts out of himself, and it's just like horrifying screams that poor Fizzy's hearing. His screams as he's like carving himself up to get out of the chains that are bolted to his body.
Yeah, you really feel bad for Fizzy. And then like he just places her in his mouth to escape. It's like, holy crap, he's gonna eat me,
Yeah. It's horrifying monster box with spider legs. Yeah.
Puts her in his mouth, grows some wings, and just takes off. Escapes from the Griffin. And then I guess the last part, right before the epilogue, is meeting the god that we were introduced to in the prologue. And we can't even, like, there's no name for him. There's no description, because he's always changing.
It's even his class his name his title is changing,
yes,
which is like, the god of dice rolls, or it's the god of whatever, it's like, that's why the name, I believe, for this chapter is Chaos,
right?
Because it's introducing you to the god of chaos. Also, chaos that ensues. So it's like chaos, and then at the very end, god of chaos, which I think is a great way of doing a chapter, of like how of writing, It's like before they really meet the god of chaos and talk to him, they have to go through all this other chaotic stuff happening, which really, I think, ties that chapter all together really well.
Yeah, and he's taken a liking to Boxy, and as gods do, they have beef with other gods. So Teresa has been doing. He's like, Teresa did something she's not supposed to do. I'm going to help you out a little bit. Oh, because Teresa instantly revived her hero, I guess, in the last book, which she was not really supposed to do. So he tips off Boxy about the location to Edward in Erosa,
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Look, there's this lich. If you defeat this lich, I'll restore all the abilities you lost
Mm-hmm.
from Zone. So now we're gonna go after this lich." And he turns Fizzy into a paladin. So he's
Yeah.
like, "Here, why don't I need you to help out Boxy, assist him. I'll make you a paladin." She's hesitant. She doesn't want to, but she
She even
becomes a
tells
paladin.
him no, and he's like,
Yeah.
okay, roll a d20. And
Mm-hmm.
she gets over 15, and he's like, oh, okay. Well, you're still a paladin. And she's like, well, what did I roll for? It's like, oh, I would have vaporized you if you didn't roll above 15.
Yeah, that's funny.
Very, yeah.
But the last sort of message here is there's no there's no reason for why me. It's just
Mm.
the luck of the draw. That's
Mm-hmm.
the way things are. So I thought that was very interesting to add a theme or whatever you want to call it to this story. It's the luck of the draw.
Yeah.
There's no why me, why me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just, and that's kind of what he's all about. He's like, he's not about like changing fates or, you know, I mean, maybe a little bit, but like he's more about like he wants to see the lowest odds happen. Like this was the odds of a box of a mimic who has a like extremely low intelligence. I think it started off with 0 intelligence, and he the strange crazy thing that happened was that he got 1 intelligence.
Mm,
Uh,
right.
right from the first book, and it just starting from that, it's like the odds that were so low. He's an odds man. He loves playing that kind of favorite, but he's
Mhm.
just a character design for, I guess we call him. His first name he had was Bob, but he's also like genderless, god entity that like, sometimes he started off as an old man, then he was like fish or something like
Right.
that with like popcorn hands or whatever, all over the place. It's like, and he shakes his boots at you, and
Yeah, it's just difficult to perceive for
it's every
characters.
time you blink, he just changes,
Yeah.
which is a really cool
Yeah.
design for a character, you
Yeah.
know?
What should we call him? Bob? The
I think
god
this
that's
is first.
difficult to perceive.
Yeah, I mean, we should write some of these down, and we can just kind of mix it up whenever we talk to him about him.
Yeah.
Just write down some of the names that they bring up, because every time they talk about him, different name. Even like Fizzy says, it's like, say my name 3 times, and it's like, says 3 different names.
Yeah.
So she's like, did I have a stroke? Am I actually dead now?
Yeah. So that brings us to this quick little epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
He transports them back to their body. It's the
Yeah.
wrong body. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oops, sorry. I don't do this often. He's like getting upset.
Yeah, it's like, you don't know how hard it was to do that,
Yeah.
especially at your guys' level. They could have just wiped you right out. It's like,
It's just
like,
funny.
yeah.
He's so interesting, so
Oh.
chaotic, and
Mm-hmm.
like at times immature almost. And it's like just weird combination of all these things.
Not taking it seriously at all. It's like
Yeah.
you get a quest timer, till I get bored. you know.
Yeah.
So, better get to it, keep it interesting,
Hmm. Well, he's
just
just having fun, I guess.
that's this whole thing. It's like, very much a silly god, where some of the other gods, like Teresa is like, oh, that stuck up bitch, she's,
Mhm.
so tight, I'm not doing that.
Um,
It's probably my favorite character in the series is the god character, which I don't know if that's fair. Yeah.
no, Huh,
And so your favorite
he's very
character is the
interesting.
god, I guess that's
The God
pretty lit
character.
RPG of me,
The God. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that caps it off.
Hmm.
We hear at the end, Boxy is now going to train Fizzy to
Hmm.
fight like a monster.
Yeah.
So that's where we leave things off. I can't wait to continue. Like this
Hmm.
is this is a phenomenal series. We got a great writer, an absolutely amazing narrator, a
Hmm.
great story. It's got a lot of the humor that I like. So that's
Hmm.
maybe that would be some of the subjective thing that I would point out there.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody's good at, like, as I think I was told you earlier, like probably that first little book part of the book was like that's probably where a lot of people stop. They're like,
Mhm.
what is this book about? What's going on here? And it really is a little short portion of time. Probably when this is probably, at least for the first, but definitely a headphones book. You can't be just like walking around the house with that just playing out loud.
But it's great. It's greatly enjoyable for us, at least. So we will absolutely be continuing. Book 3 is up next, Vortena. So that'll be our next chat. And don't forget, any viewers can obviously comment or suggest stuff to us. We will take that into great consideration. That's the end of this chat. Nick, thanks for joining me. So
anytime.
We'll be back for book 3.
Yeah.
And we will see everyone in the next one.